in the Sea of Galilee, which makes sense because pigs can swim. And so the fact that they all ran down and all drowned was just literally suicidal. Suicidal.
Well played. Well played.
And there is the Sea of Galilee, right there. This is Tel Dan. One of the oldest archaeological digs is found up here, actually near the gate they call the Gate of Abraham. But this is the location after Joshua entered the land. They divided up the land by lots. This northern lot was given to the tribe of Dan, who came up here, and as you read from the sign, conquered this people and made it their city. This is the city, this location dates back to that time they were conquered, and the Dan set this up to be their main city for their tribal area. This is pretty significant. This is a massive wall for that day and age.
I like how he turned up here already. You want the short one? No, we want that. Okay.
So what is what you do now? You live in the land, you need to worship our God, but God cannot choose the one and then
So this city of Dan stood for 250 years to 300 years, and these were the gates that you could enter into the city, and it held this stronghold on this location. But the Israelites, and then later the Assyrians, after they've deported the Israelites, and we have the beginning of Samaritans, sort of half-breeds, were continuing to go up here, and we'll show you the altar, and worship the golden calf. Well, King Josiah was full of the Spirit of the Lord, came up as far as this, even though this was no longer in Judah, to take care of the golden calf. And here's the reference. It says he came up, he defiled the high places. That was the temple. Now remember that a prophet had come all the way up here and had prophesied already that a king named Josiah would come along and destroy Jeroboam's altar. But it took several hundred years to happen. And it also says he destroyed these gates. And so these are just the remnants of these massive gates that used to sit here to this city. So it fulfills prophecy. And it's just an amazingly rich spiritual place here. So I am in one of the entryway corridors for the gate. So you can see how you could have, like what happened in the book of Ruth. You could see how people would come in, they'd have a meeting, they'd make decisions. Remember when Absalom sat in the city gates and he made decisions and he said, oh, come in and I'll tell you what I think you should do. Here's the entryway, as you can see. They were kind of like little side rooms that you could go to and make decisions. There's another one over here as well. These are the gates of Dan.
Silly jokes with Travis, the part of the show when Travis comes out and tells a silly joke.
Springs of Dan. They used to throw people from way up here at the top down into this water. And if they survived, they'd pick them back up and throw. No, actually, this is only about. That's how small it is. Just kidding.
For the Lord will strike Israel as reed is shaken in the water. He will uproot Israel from this good land which he gave to their fathers, and will scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their wooden images, provoking the Lord to anger. And he will give Israel up because of their sins of Jeroboam, who sinned and who made Israel sin.
So what we're about to see next is the reason the Assyrians put hooks in the jaws and the nostrils of the Jews in the north. And God destroyed the northern tribes by what we are about to just see.
So here we are at a high place that Jeroboam built for the people to worship. And basically he said, you don't need God anymore. Here's your God. You'll worship here. In hopes that basically the Israelites would forget their identity and their connection with God. How close is that to where we live in America and our culture telling us we don't need God anymore? Here's what we're going to worship, and whatever that is, merchandise, land, money. We have our own high places at home, and we need to be careful, because this high place and the sin that was committed here caused Israel to lose their nation for 2,600 years. Millions went to hell. Millions were taken into captivity with fish hooks and bone hooks in their cheeks and their noses, and led to foreign lands, not to come back here for 2,600 years.
So this altar, you can see by Daniel, the size of it was very large. They would burn whole animals up there. It's at a high place. Notice the high elevation. You always want to pick the highest places. You read again and again throughout the scriptures where they sacrificed on high places and how it was an abomination to God. Well, it's because they felt like they were closer to the gods. Anyway, so this altar is in direct competition with what God has given in Jerusalem. And it's extreme far north of Israel. Where those people are sitting was actually the bema seat, or the high seat, where they would set the golden altar. So here are the golden calves. So here would be the place where they'd sacrifice, and there would be where the priest would minister up above, where the golden calf was sitting higher than the altar even, to kind of, if you will, look upon the sacrifices. But as Andy said, this destroyed an entire nation. When God gave the 10 Commandments, the first one was, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And the second one was, thou shalt not make a graven image of anything on earth or in the sky, for that is not God. And they did both of them right here. And this stands as a remnant of what God thinks about false worship. So we must be careful, as Andy said, not to replace the true God with our God of our own making. So this area would have been where they placed the golden calf.
The high place.
And this is where you would ascend. We're standing on the steps where you would ascend up to it. And here below is the altar where we would make offerings to it. An idol. So this bunker overlooks Lebanon. That's Lebanon in the foreground there, in the aftground. And this is where they would come and watch their enemies to see whether or not they were going to attack. There's a bunker over here. This was probably some sort of a military bunker. Genesis 14, where there was a massive battle between multiple kings. Some of the kings that were actually up in this area over here, over in Syria and near Damascus, were having the king of Sodom and Gomorrah pay tribute to them. So they were sort of a tributary of them. And so at one point in time they rebel. So the king of Sodom and Gomorrah, the two kings, and a lot of others listed in Genesis 14 rebel. And so these kings gather together, king of nations, Chedorlaomer, come down and attack the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And here's how it goes. It says, then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm in Genesis chapter 14. And all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. The one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, because he dwelt in a place called Mamre. And it says, when he heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house, or as Theron likes to say, his 318 ninjas. And he went in pursuit as far as Dan, right here, this location. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh. And so Abram takes his servants, chases his nephew, attacks them in this area, passes through this gate to go towards Damascus, and chases them down. And it's a fighting that takes obviously more than a day, maybe a week, maybe 3 weeks, but they chase them down, and by God's grace, they bring them all back. All the goods, everything comes back with Abraham and his servants. So his army, his 318 ninjas, walk down these steps right here, right in front of us, through that gate right there. And this is the oldest site, is that correct, Jason? The oldest archaeological dig that they have in Israel today. This is Abraham's gate. 1700 BC. Wow. Anyways, it's real. There it is. The Bible is true. So this is where they went through. And this is what the ancient Canaanite city used to look like, right there.
And this little guy right here is just the part.
This is just the exit gate, right here. Seen right there, and living, well, still around.